America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
Media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politic. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politic, and I understand that you're in the UK right now, Brian. Or Jason, is it Jason? So sorry that we can't help you right now being in the UK. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox on the Waterboy, and of course, Pastor Doug Wilson is in the studio with us to talk about all things Moscow, Prodigal America, and the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
How about that?
And everything else.
And everything else.
And the kitchen sink.
All of it.
Are you concerned your child's current education won't give them the skills necessary to succeed in any area of life? Consider homeschooling with Classical Conversations. By applying the classical Christian model of education, Classical Conversations curriculum encourages students to learn how to learn and how to think for themselves so they can adapt to every challenge life throws at them. Join the over 50,000 families in 50 countries who have chosen to educate their children with Classical Conversations by visiting classicalconversations.com/FLF. That's classicalconversations.com/FLF. Next, in Genesis chapter 2, verses 10 through 12, God tells of the gold in the land of Havilah, and that the gold of that land is good. Ever since the dawn of our father's world, gold has been universally recognized as true money and therefore the most reliable store of savings. Cross Politics corporate partner Alps Precious Metals enables their clients to protect their God-given hard-earned wealth from the serious financial problems that are upon us. Alps provides the cross-politic family with the best strategies and solutions for investing in physical precious metals. As a result, you can enjoy a peace of mind that can be had with few other investments. Call James Hunter at Alps at 251-377-2197. James Hunter just gives out his cell phone like
He
that.
likes people.
251-377-2197, or visit their website at www.alpspmg.com. alpspmg.com.
So Doug, this year's, I think, been kind of an interesting year for us here in Moscow.
And maybe you should stop saying that.
Yeah. We don't want
It's not over yet.
We don't want it to be interesting.
It's still going.
For the longest time, we kind of ended up starting Grace Agenda in some sense because people wouldn't invite us to their conferences to speak. And so we just kind of threw our own conference. You started your blog because Thomas Nelson stopped publishing our books. We beefed up Canon Press because book publishers stopped publishing our books. And so we've just kind of seen this, I don't know, slow cancel culture in Moscow. But that feels like they think they're Big Eva, but they're really small kind of compared to what's starting to happen with
The embargo is starting to break.
The embargo's starting to break.
I think it's broken.
I mean, we got about 25 different denominations represented at Prodigal America right now, already from ticket sales. But then in addition to that, like you're going on Tucker, Charlie Kirk, and then you speak at TP USA. They're willing to hang out with us. Kind of Big Eva's not.
Right.
But there's just, I can't quite make sense of it all. I mean, I understand, I think, a lot of it. But what do you actually, I want to start here. And one of your sermon at TP USA Faith in July was just so good, so encouraging to me. And let's start with this clip here.
And then we'll find out what you think of it.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to agree or disagree?
With yourself.
Coming back to our earlier metaphor, all the bad guys are merely numbered among the combatant chimps. They are not the author of any of this. They can certainly vaunt themselves for a time in Ozymandian pride, but when the true author turns the page, that is it for them. So who is this true author? Christians believe that the author of the story that you are in is Almighty God. He turns the hearts of kings in whichever way he pleases. He numbers the hairs of your head. He decrees the position and velocity of every atom in every asteroid in the darkness of deep space. There is nothing in this cosmos that is outside his determinative purpose and will. Do you see that yellow mutt running around on the last day of the world? Before the world began, before ancient times, God determined the number of hairs that would be on that yellow dog's back. God is God, and there is no other. From our vantage point, things certainly look dire, but that is from our vantage point. I can assure you of one thing. God in heaven is not looking down on the 2024 presidential election cycle in a panic. The thrones and dominions are not all in a doodah. The angels are not scrambling and running through the heavenly courts yelling, Plan B, Plan B. We are in a storm, no doubt about it, but the tops of all of our clouds are radiant and white. Not only does God turn the hearts of kings, but he also turns the heads of former presidents at just the right moment.
That wasn't there. I just added that one.
Such that the bullet grazes the ear, leaving behind the red signature of providence. This was not an example of God lurching forward to intervene in our affairs, but rather an instance of God showing us the steadiness of his hand. I'm not here remarking on the greatness of Donald Trump, but rather on the greatness of God.
So how many people came down and received Jesus again that day? I just want to know.
When he did the altar call.
Yeah, I'm sure there was one.
He just walked off the stage when at the end. So what is your take on what is going on? I mean, there's a couple of maybe interchangeable questions here. Just big picture, what is going on? Why is Moscow receiving such attention broadly?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a related question that Gabe was getting at earlier is, while we've been also so disenfranchised by many in the evangelical world, the embargo sort of situation. But what do you think is going on?
So this ties in nicely, actually, fortunately, to your theme of your conference, Prodigal America.
Yeah.
What got the prodigal son's attention? It was hard times. It was the pig food.
Yeah.
And let's say that he had endured talks from his father back when he in his stupid years.
Yeah.
And let's say he had endured lectures that were doctrinally sound from his older brother.
Yeah. Which is likely.
Which is quite possible. And yes, I know I've heard it before. And then it just bounces off his forehead. All of that truth bounces off. Then when he hits hard times and he's looking at the pig food and the pig food starts looking good, he comes to his senses, it says. So one of the things I've seen in the decades of our ministry here, there are things that we were saying 20 years ago that were not garnering anywhere near the attention that they're getting now.
Yeah.
And the reason they're getting it now is because all the wheels have come off of the culture.
We're in the pig slop now.
We're in the pig food. Everything has fallen apart. The culture is destabilized. Up used to be up, but it isn't anymore. Clown world appears to have taken over. And so consequently, someone who says something that's sane, it's bracing and refreshing. It used to be tedious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Mom, I've heard it before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
We know.
Or we know. Yeah. Roll your eyes. So it's the teenager who doesn't want to listen to mom. And then 10 years later, she's got to passel little kids herself. And all of a sudden she's hungry for what mom might say.
Yeah.
Right. That's I think the dynamic.
Yeah.
So when things were good, stable, calm, and evangelical America was fat and sassy. It was easy to have soothing words spoken to you from steady as she goes, conservative, light teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Everything's fine. Keep your nose clean. Everything's fine. But then when everything went south, all of a sudden the bromides weren't cutting it anymore. Platitudes don't cut it anymore. And all of a sudden, the people who were saying hard things to endure 10 years before, all of a sudden that hard word is refreshing.
Yeah.
Proverbs says that an honest answer is like a kiss on the lips.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is going on.
So, Joe Rogan, I don't think he's a Christian. He doesn't have the Holy Spirit, but it seems like some of these guys like Joe are they're seeing the pig slop and then they're waking up at some level.
Elon Musk, same thing.
Yep.
They're looking at this stuff and they've got enough common grace to see that this isn't right. But they have no answer. They have no solution, but at least they're open to, talk to me.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson, the same thing.
We showed a clip on the show a week or so ago of
With Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan on his show live, looking up on Google Maps for churches and saying, there's a Baptist church. There's another Baptist church. And then he tells his audience, if there's a church by you should go to it.
And then he says the green room, I think, is like church for us. It's where we go get right with each other and then go out and have fun.
But if there's a church by, he's like pointing out these Baptist churches on this Google Maps. They're everywhere. You should go. So what are some of those things? So everybody's looking and saying, oh, this is what we need to hear. This is what we needed. We didn't know we needed this, but now we need it.
Right.
What would be some of the things at the top of your list, couple, 2 or 3 that you say, this is something that we've been saying for a long time. The rest of the evangelical world is like, yeah, dad.
Yeah.
What are those things?
I would say the number one message that I'm in the public square, I want to keep emphasizing, and that is the secular project is dead. Secularism is incoherent. It doesn't work. You got to serve somebody. And if you try to keep up the pretense of secularism, all that's going to happen is you're going to wind up worshiping demons, and you're not going to be willing to admit that that's what you're doing.
Mm.
Until they
But
put
enough
up
about David French.
Well, I was thinking about the
the 90
abortion
foot
bus.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about the 90-foot statue to
Yeah, the abortion,
IUD,
same thing.
The
Yeah, those
IUD,
are-
the
yeah, yeah.
explosive IUD.
Hinduism statue in
that,
Texas.
Yeah, the monkey god statue,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the bus outside of political convention,
Right.
Yep. The
where they're
DNC.
killing children,
Right.
Yes.
25 babies
Yeah.
so far.
and you say, okay, when are you guys? It's like that hideous strength,
Right.
where they begin believing themselves to be all sciency and technocratic and the latest thing and educated and academic. But the whole thing by the end of the book has devolved into demon worship, devil worship.
Right.
And that's precisely where we are.
Right.
In this madhouse.
And so when you say repudiating secularism, we mean repudiating in the public square a naked public square, a godless public square.
So evangelicals have always maintained the sinner must confess, I need Jesus.
Right. Jesus is Lord.
Jesus is Lord, meaning Jesus should be my Lord.
Right.
I need Jesus. My life's a mess. I need Jesus.
Yeah.
I drink too much. I need Jesus. My marriage is on the rocks.
Right.
What I'm saying is the message needs to be, we need Jesus.
America needs
America
Jesus.
needs
America,
Jesus.
we need
Yeah.
Jesus collectively.
Yeah.
Out in public, we need Jesus.
Right.
And someone will say, no, we don't need Jesus. And I'd say, well, how's it going without him?
Yeah.
You say you don't need him. You've banished him. You've banished all mention of him.
Right.
You prosecute people who try to bring him up. So how's it going?
Right.
You don't even know the difference between a boy and a girl anymore.
Right.
You don't know anything. And so consequently, secularism has failed, and people who have retained the sort of common sense, let's say a red state common sense,
Yeah.
people who still go to rodeos,
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
and the bull is the bull, and the
Yeah.
bull ride is not a cow ride.
Yeah.
When they do that and they hear you saying something like that, they say, yeah,
That's true.
that's true.
Right.
That's true. In fact, that's the only true thing I've heard in the last 3 years.
Right.
Right.
And all the trusted all the institutions I used to trust.
Yeah.
I don't trust any of them anymore.
Right.
I used to trust the military. I used to trust the intelligence agencies. I used to trust the weatherman. I used to trust.
That's right.
That's real.
Name one American institution that has not blown through their trust, forfeited the trust of the American people. Nobody has anything
Right.
to look to. Their institutional failure is in every direction.
Yeah.
And that includes the church, the sort of the respectable part of the church. The disreputable part of the church is now getting a hearing.
Mm.
What was amazing watching the Democratic National Convention and a lot of the speeches, they all at some level touched on faith, family, and freedom.
Right.
It's like,
As symbolized by a blow up IUD.
yeah, right. Of course, that's in the background
And an
too,
abortion
right?
bus.
Yeah,
But
an
they're-
abortion bus.
But it's like they're kind of trying to play to the middle.
Oh, yeah.
As their campaign is. Obviously, they're doing that. But it was amazing to me to kind of hear. I mean, I haven't heard the Democratic Party talk about faith, family, and freedom for years. And then you got all these people blaming Trump. Like they spent most of their speech blaming Trump for all the problems when he's been president 4 years out of the last 16 years.
Yeah.
But I think what really kind of bothers me in all this is that there's so many lies being talked about from the Democratic Party. Everyone on the stage, I could identify one easy lie or another.
Mm-hmm.
And
Just one?
yeah, I'm just saying at least, even Steve Kerr was lying, the
Yeah.
basketball coach of Golden State Warriors. But it's hard to, but the people are believing it. They're
Well,
believing these lies.
no, they're acting like they're believing.
That's right.
They're acting like
You
they
think the
believe.
Democrat, middle of the row Democrat is not believing that?
I think a lot of people are not believing it. They have their own doubts about Trump and the Republicans, which they've always had.
Yeah.
But I think the loss of faith runs deep, and it runs across both parties. And I've seen people on Man on the Street interviews surprising the interviewer
Right.
by what they clearly don't believe anymore.
Pastor, I think you're absolutely right. When you look, especially if you go watch Breakfast Club and just some of the other even liberal podcasts or shows, no one's trusting any institution. It's funny because we all have the same complaint if you start listening. How we decide to fix the problem is where we really start disagreeing. I want to get back to Pastor Toby's 3 questions. He asked you what are the 3 things. One of you said secularism, but before I move to those, you made me think. It seems that when we come to take the axe to the root of secularism, the first people that jump in front of the axe seem to be very well-meaning Christians.
Yeah.
Why is it that there's such a love affair with them over the idea of keeping secularism from tumbling?
Well, because they think that the central driving evangelistic strategy is to be winsome. And they've convinced themselves that confrontation or direct bluntness is not winsome. And so you're okay, I might agree with you at the end of the day, but you're just too brash. It's too out there.
Yeah.
I want to soften it for you.
We want a neutral space that we can meet.
That 11th commandment.
And then we can.
I don't want the non-believer to feel threatened.
Yeah. But that's not possible.
Yeah.
So they let themselves be threatened by the non-believer instead.
Yeah. So oftentimes Christians will take offense on behalf of the non-Christians.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're constantly running scenarios in their mind. Well, if you do that, you're having an alcoholic beverage at a restaurant. Suppose a former alcoholic comes in, or you say, "Good job, moms," on Mother's Day at church. Well, suppose there's a single person there, or suppose someone had an abusive mom. Suppose they're constantly flipping it and problematizing everything,
Is that
which is a trick that they learned from the world.
Victim via proxy in one sense too.
Correct.
Yes.
I'll feel feelings on behalf of the victim, and I'll be his or her advocate to you.
So, unlike David French, I don't think if you have a problem with Trump, you shouldn't vote for the Democratic Party. But this question is still lingering in the back of my mind for a while. In a lot of ways, Bill Clinton is Donald Trump. I mean, with the infidelity, Bill Clinton started building the wall in the 90s. Bill Clinton's economic policy very similar, partly because the Republicans kind of forced it a little bit too. But Bill Clinton's immigration policies, I mean, there's a lot that actually crosses the line with Trump. Why would I be willing to vote for Trump and think it's wrong to vote for Bill Clinton?
So I would say it has to do with trajectories and what direction is this going? So Bill Clinton was a shrewd enough politician to know that you can't go left that fast.
Yeah.
He's even willing to sign DOMA.
Yeah, he was
Defensive Marriage Act.
So he Clinton was a very talented politician. He was a very, very talented retail politician. And he knew what you could get away with and he knew what you couldn't get away with. But anybody who was at all insightful could see who he was married to and who was going to be in his ear and what direction this was going to go.
Right.
Okay. Now, it is quite possible that Trump is going to go in the wrong direction, also as evidenced by the watering down of the abortion stand and stuff.
Yeah, right.
And that sort of thing will happen if it's allowed to. But think of it this way: if Harris is elected, there will be no evangelical Christians in the White House.
David French might.
He said no
evangelical Christians. And even French is going to find out that he's not tolerable. He's going to be discarded as soon as his usefulness is over.
That's right.
Which is actually not too far in the future.
Yeah.
So if Harris is elected, there'll be no evangelicals in the White House. If Trump is elected, the place will be crawling with them. Okay. And personnel is policy.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not the case with Bill Clinton.
Right.
Bill Clinton was a shrewd enough, talented enough politician to know what he had to say out in public.
Yep.
But the trajectory of where he was going was clear. There will be many people involved in a Trump administration who will not be on board with the watering down of the abortion plank and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to get back to my
other two
question.
I
You said secular repudiation of secularism.
Right.
What are two more things?
Patriarchy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, when you reject secularism and you start worshiping the true God, some of these other
they
things
fall into place.
Right. As well. But if I wanted another major talking point, I would say we need to recover a lack of embarrassment over male leadership.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
In the home, in the church, and as a general rule in society.
Yeah.
So complementarianism, much of complementarianism is simply right-wing egalitarianism.
Yeah.
And
Right wing.
right. And then the radical feminist would be the left wing of the egalitarians. But complementarians want to say, yeah, there are these Bible verses that make us affirm the headship of the man in the home.
Yeah.
But we'll coat that over with servant leader language.
Right.
But the sort of the unabashed look, God made men for certain things and God made women for certain things, and their skill sets are different.
Right.
And we ought to stop shuffling our feet and being embarrassed about that.
Right.
Now that begins with men assuming leadership in the home and men assuming leadership in the church and modeling for the world how that can function without being toxic.
Right.
Okay. Because we're going to be told that any manifestation of that is by definition toxic.
Right.
And we have to police our own ranks because sometimes it is.
Right.
There are people who, but at the same, so I think we should start using the term patriarchy as opposed to complementarianism, and simply say we need men. Little boys need men, little girls need men, wives need men, culture needs men. The U.S. Army needs men.
You better say
The
it.
Navy.
It seems like
I remember when I first came here, the thing that like struck me, and I moved here in about 2002. The thing that you said in one sermon, you know, in 1 year, you didn't repeat it very much, but you said resolve to not have any problem Bible verses.
Right.
And that was just like so dumb for me and huge for me. It's like, of course, you know, it just a lot of lights flipped on. But that's kind of like where complementarianism comes out of. It's just this, the church status quo of slowly blunting the edges and softening the edges of the Bible over time.
Yeah, you can tell that someone is in the process of going liberal when they wrestle with Bible verses.
Right.
That's so bad.
I have to wrestle with this text.
Really have to wrestle. Real struggle.
Or a challenge is thrown from the world. And you have to wrestle with that. You wrestle with everything.
Right.
But it's always wrestling to a stalemate.
Right.
Nobody ever says, well, when the world confronts us with this issue, why don't we beat it up?
Right.
Yeah.
Why don't we load our gun with scripture and fire back?
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. The church did have a patriarchal position at one point. How and why did we ever give that
1900 years
Okay.
or so.
Wow. So because it seems like the complementarian movement really kind of started 15, 20 years ago.
Well, no, more than that. But
Okay.
Complementarianism, it's been a generation or so, but complementarianism began as a rearguard action fighting against feminism.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So there was this feminist push, and there were Christians who wanted to sort of build a firewall to prevent it from going too much farther. And so that complementarianism was the way they did it.
Ended up being a Jello wall.
It did not hold the line. I'm grateful for how long it did hold, but it didn't have the success that you would have hoped.
Why didn't we just beat it up with patriarchy at that point?
Yeah.
I guess with some guilt there or something like that.
Well, it has to do with this is something that Joe Rigney talks about, the progressive gaze on your shoulder. There's a little progressive telling you how this is going to fly. When you say this, what's going to happen?
Right.
When you say that thing, what sort of letters will your boss get? What sort of complaints will the elder board get if you say that in the pulpit?
Mhm.
So basically, the whole culture leans a certain way. And because the culture is leaning leftward, anybody who wants to say something to the right, if anybody who wants to say something conservative or faithful, knows that there will be a price to pay.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of it too wasn't just a simple lack of apprehension of how deep the rot already went.
Mhm.
I mean, because we had 1900 years of patriarchy,
Right.
and a bunch of generals and grandpas in the 50s and 60s still around.
Mhm.
And I wonder if there was a sense in like, well, we still have a patriarchy.
Right.
So like
Society was still that way.
So the wall we're building here is just to like kind of protect what we already have. And then like 15 minutes later, they realized they didn't have that.
Right.
I also, it seems to me like to your point about the pig slop, it seems like the things that God has given us. I mean, you've got the IUDs at the DNC, you've got the vasectomies, you got the abortions happening, you got the tranny stuff. On the patriarchy thing, you also have, we had this Me Too thing that hit, where, you have to listen to women, believe all women, all this kind of thing, which very quickly, I think also showed the impotence of complementarianism, because there you had, these pushes for, well, if you're going to have women who have been through toxic relationships, you've got to have women counselors. Pastors are not qualified to take care of that. I think leading all the way up into COVID itself is sort of the what some guys are referring to as the longhouse sort of phenomenon, where it's highly feminized already. That's creeping into the church, and nobody has any weapons.
Yeah.
What do you do about this?
If we had old guard patriarchs and the COVID pandemic hit, everybody would have been told to walk it off.
Yeah.
And if I could insert the third thing, I'd say secularism, patriarchy. The third thing I would say is honest money. Okay.
What do you mean by that?
Well, in all of this corruption, follow the money. And so what this is going to do is get at the end of the day to Bitcoin or its equivalents, things that the government can't print or that the government can't manipulate.
Yeah.
People work and add value in God's world. Work that's blessed by God adds value, and that value accumulates.
Right.
And the state tries to siphon off as much of that as they can, redistribute as much of it as they can in order to bribe people to do things.
Yeah.
So one of the things we ought to be praying for is a return to honest money, which is money that the government can't jigger with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's a whole another world.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Would you like, the gold standard? Like, what would be a good example of what you?
I think it has to be a parallel thing, like Bitcoin, at least initially, right? Because the Fed is in the process of devaluing everything, and we have to be ready for, at some point, everything's going to come unstuck.
Yeah,
and there has to be some sort of way to manage. And I'm not against gold, not against Bitcoin. I'm for anything the government can't print.
Yeah,
it seems to me that on the flip side of that, the pastoral or personal angle, honest money means also honest hearts. And so you want a standard outside to measure the work that we've done and be able to do business that way. But that's been one of the emphases of your dad and your ministry here in Moscow for decades now, is honest to God.
Yeah.
Honest before God, clean hearts.
Right.
No backlog of sins, bitterness, resentment, fellowship with other believers, which includes confessing your sins, doing restitution. But that's all part of honest money. That our word is worth something.
One of the things the recons used to say back in the 80s is that inflation and things like that only succeed because of the larceny in everybody's heart. Everybody's wanting to borrow money at this rate and pay it back at that rate. So honest hearts, it really is where it starts.
Right.
Yes.
And you are doing the same thing when you have bitterness or sins that you haven't confessed and you're out of fellowship, but you're trying to function in this world, God's world. You're trying you're inflating your value. Like you aren't worth that. you want to have people to deal with you in an honest way, and you want to get along in this world, but you're ripping people off by holding these grudges, and now you're lying, and more lies beget lies. Larceny in your heart. You were going to ask something. I interrupted.
No,
you.
that was part of the question I was going to ask, is that most of the times I'm thinking through things and being theonomic as I think through them, the one I always have a problem with is dealing with inflation. How do Christians deal with inflation? And I was going to say, telling the truth, making a product that's actually worth what it's worth. But then when you get out there in the market, that's one of those that it takes a long time to work through. You don't say, all right, here I go. I'm going to be honest in my heart, and inflation is going to change tomorrow.
Right.
You still have to live in the world where everything's inflated.
Right.
And so the way that starts to stack is just over time. You have a long time. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people aren't really liking the long play answer. I think even on our side, it's kind of like, well, I want to change my heart and I want God to fix it all tomorrow.
Americans want reformation the same way they want coffee at the quick stop.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They want it hot and they want it now.
Yeah, we want microwave reformation.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things. It doesn't sound like there's any way out of this one in a short term.
Yeah, there's basically this is not a quick fix situation.
You don't get out of it even with the 4-year election.
No.
But Trump said we won't have to vote in 4 years.
That's what he told us. But I think he's playing to, he knows that's where people really are. That's how they feel.
Yeah.
If I get this guy in, it's all fixed now.
That's what the salesmen always say, though.
Yeah.
This is all you need. This is all you need until you need something else. What about some of the other attention that's coming our direction? I'm thinking of, there was a recent PCA overture to study Moscow theology and Christian nationalism
and theonomy and reconstruction.
Okay, wow,
Yeah,
everything,
all four,
all of the things.
Yeah.
And then you and Jared were just down in Escondido with Pastor Chris Gordon.
Well done.
Talking about Federal Vision and I don't know, Moscow mood stuff.
And
but,
nationalism.
Yeah.
Nationalism.
So what is your take on that kind of attention? That's a little bit different than Tucker. That's a little bit different than TPUSA.
Right. So it was mentioned earlier that Moscow has been under an embargo for a long time, where let's not talk about them.
He who must not be named.
He who must not be named. It's gotten to the point where the embargo is broken down and certain people are having to confront with their own parishioners.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not just we who were embargoed, but different congregations out there were embargoed, kept away from us. So there are people who have disliked me for a long time who really like Tucker.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
And then I show up on Tucker and there's a sort of, wait a minute.
Right.
Kind of thing. So my operating assumption is that some of the people who are opening up, for which I'm very grateful, Chris Gordon went out on a limb in inviting us to his church. So I'm very grateful for him doing that. But I'm assuming that he's getting different signals now from people in his congregation, people that he knows, things that he reads, than he was getting 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay. You mean maybe a little more positive or maybe neutral, but more positive signals, something like that?
Or let's say a family or two in his congregation who are subscribers to Canon Plus.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when a pastor across the country, a pastor or elder session feels the need to pronounce on something, like there was a Baptist church in Kentucky, Denny Burke's church.
Yeah.
When they issued Serrated Edge,
they issued a statement on this. My assumption is they're dealing with it locally,
because people are reading their books in their church.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there how many people are subscribers to Canon Plus in these churches, and they're staring at it and they say, what's wrong with this? This seems like what you said last Sunday, or this seems what's going on? And so that increases the need to address it by name.
Yeah.
Now, on the presbytery, the PCA presbytery that is released this overture or submitted this overture to examine Moscow theology, I'd like to just state on the record, right out of the starting blocks, my willingness to be interviewed. If a committee is formed by the PCA to investigate these things, I'm more than willing to talk to the committee and explain things, help out, provide resources, do anything like that. The worst thing in the world would be for the PCA to do a rerun of what they did on Federal Vision.
Not talking to you, not interviewing you.
Not talking to people, not talking to the principals,
well.
Do you think you'll see Reformation revival in your lifetime?
Yes, because I'm going to be 180 when I go.
Pastor, I got to say
The line
something.
is laying down the lane.
I watched that interview. It was 2 hours and some change long.
With Gordon?
It's 3 hours.
3 hours. Yeah, sorry, 3 hours. Yeah, that's right.
I watched it on double speed, I admit.
But one of the things that I was thinking about was that it's been really interesting watching. I remember the embargo. I was on the other side of it for a while.
You're wretched.
I was at Wretched TV with Todd Freer. There were articles that would come in that we thought were really good, but because of who they were attached to, we would use the articles and wouldn't mention your name and used to talk about the worldview and so on and so forth. But one of the things that's been really interesting. So I've been watching it for a while and been on this side of it now. I've watched that you haven't treated them how they've treated you. Yeah. Right. You have and this is kind of shocking, is you're sitting here saying, hey, if you guys are going to do this overture, I'm more than willing to come and talk with you and work through it. And it's just like, wow, that was easy. We could have settled this a long time ago had everybody just had that. Why is it taking guys who are supposed to be men of God so long to have a conversation that's that simple for 3 hours? We did years, right? We waited years and blah, blah. You can read his book on parenting, everything else, not so much. And instead of having the conversation, by the way, the most successful conversation on his YouTube channel, I just want to add that, and probably everywhere else too.
Chris Gordon.
Chris Gordon. Yeah. Why not have that conversation years ago? And I hope that everybody's looking to say, well, why don't we do that now?
Right.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to answer. I'm not trying to put you in a tough spot. I'm just saying it bothers me. and I'm glad that be happy I'm not your PR person. That's all I'm saying.
So one of the things you have to be sympathetic to is that especially pastors and leaders, they've got constituencies, and some of them have multiple constituencies. So what Chris Gordon did, he was going to hear from some people for doing what he did.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he was going to hear from people who are not going to be at all happy with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's an established pastor, good reputation, influential church. And if he's going to catch it, as I assume he was going to catch it, what would you think of a pastor who's been there 3 years, not well established? Mm-hmm. His wife is concerned about their mortgage. Yeah. There's going to be all kinds of, if you say that, honey, you could be gone. You could be canceled. You could be unemployable. Yep. You could be, all of that kind of thing works. And I think it's important to be patient with people because you don't know how God's going to play this out. God's in control of it, and I should do unto them what I wish they would have done unto me. Mm-hmm. I don't get to do unto them what they did in fact do unto me.
Yeah, but that just feels so good though.
Well, I'm not even.
Until the final judgment.
The flesh is weak.
So zoom out a little bit more. We're looking at, we've already touched on a little bit, a wild 2024 political year.
Yeah.
We've got
assassination attempt.
We've got this.
That's been deep sixth,
Yeah. We're not sure. Not sure if it happened according to the mainstream media, but and then this, quick, not Biden, Kamala, DNC's going. And what are some of what's your thought right now in terms of what are you braced for, and what do God's people need to be thinking most about heading into this election cycle?
So the thing that Christians need to stop doing is they have to stop readjusting the baseline. Okay, what's the measurement? What's normal? So Christians want life to be normal, and so they, when things get weird, they adjust that line to the new weirdness is now the new normal. Right. And they'll say things like, I don't think you have any reason to believe that there's going to be cheating in November. And I think they're cheating now.
Right.
With Kamala.
Everything about this is not, if we have a normal election, I think may the best man or the best woman win. we're not going to have that kind of election. That's not what's happening.
Mm.
And it hasn't been happening for years.
Can you explain that a little more detail? Like, in what way?
Sure. Before Trump was inaugurated in 2016, the FBI was already actively working to subvert his presidency.
Yeah.
Okay. Before he
Russian collusion already started.
they had already started,
Yep.
including taps, wiretaps.
That's right.
That kind of
Dossier,
thing.
all this stuff.
And the dossier that was generated by the opposition party,
Yep.
that fed into 2 impeachment attempts.
Mhm.
Then, and so Trump was basically hogtied for a bunch of his administration because of the active illegal opposition
Yep.
that was aimed at him. Then, when he is out of office and then he decides to run again, some ridiculous
Charges.
indictments,
Right.
Yeah.
were mounted against him. 4 of them,
In different states.
in different states.
Yeah.
3 of them fell apart. He was convicted on 1 because that trial was
In New
there
York.
was a thumb on the scale.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The judge is going to be quite possibly sentencing Trump to Rikers Island before the election.
Okay.
Okay. And then the assassination attempt.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think how much more evidence do you need?
About which there are no answers.
Yeah,
Apparently.
and conflicting answers.
Right.
And the more I learn about Butler, PA, the weirder it gets. And then just a few weeks after that, a Secret Service agent disappeared because she had to breastfeed her kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
During the assassination.
During one of Trump's rallies.
no,
Oh,
it
just
was
during
a subsequent event.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And the lead agent didn't know where she'd gone. And I think
You gotta be kidding me.
You've got a breastfeeding mom on the presidential detail.
Yeah.
Are you
Who's
and you
bringing her baby along, apparently?
so either this is everything about it is bizarre, abnormal, not right.
Yeah.
And this is all what they're doing in broad daylight.
Right.
Mhm.
If they're doing this kind of thing in broad daylight and muscling through
What's going behind the scenes?
what's going on,
Yeah.
what's going on under the water, what's going on behind the scenes.
What are some of the stranger things in Butler?
Like how did he get the gun where he got the gun? How was that rooftop not monitored?
Yeah.
Right.
Why was there a clean what was they knew there was a threat. They knew there was a guy there with a rangefinder and a
Earlier that
suspicious
day.
character earlier, just a short time before.
Right.
So what was the president? They couldn't find him.
Right.
But if they can't find him, why is the president allowed to get up on the
Right.
stage?
Right.
Right. That's just
Control the things you can control. Yeah.
control the things you can control. So there are. I just saw a gent named Steve Butler, I think it is, who works for the Blaze, who said there are various operatives, like intelligence agency operatives, who were dressed the same way the assassin was,
Okay.
or attempted assassin was.
Yeah.
And so one of the theories is they didn't shoot the guy on the roof because
They thought he might.
they didn't know, who
Has
He was,
You
he
know
was
I
a
wear-
plainclothes guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a plain ghost guy.
Yeah.
So I saw a photo of one of these guys.
Yeah.
Is agency ID fuzzed out, so you couldn't tell which agency it was.
Yeah.
But dressed the same way, cargo shorts.
Wow.
And you think, okay,
How'd that kid know to dress that way?
yeah, and so the phone tracking to areas near the FBI,
Yep.
basically, and then the stonewalling of the intelligence agencies before Congress
It's
means
unbelievable.
that. So let me just say at the outset, there could be an entirely innocent in quotation marks
Yeah.
explanation for all this. The only innocent one, though, is gross incompetence.
Right.
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 Yeah.
But
Massive.
not criminal.
Right.
You just gross incompetence. But the FBI and the Secret Service are behaving in a way calculated to foment conspiracy thinking.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
if everybody assumes
Right.
that the deep state tried to shoot Donald Trump, they have every right to think that,
Yeah.
based on the
Right.
behavior of the agencies after the
Especially, and again, to your point, 3 weeks later, if there's a nursing mom that disappears
Right.
off the details, like, have we learned anything?
Well, so then, Pastor, what makes us think then this next coming election is going to be less insane than that attempted assassination? How can we trust anything we're going to do with our votes?
It's not going to be less insane, but fortunately, the way the electoral system works in the United States is elections are run by the states and not by the federal government.
Yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but this whole mess is a strong argument against ever letting the feds anywhere near it. And
it's probably a reason why they would argue that it should be.
correct.
They'll use the chaos to say, we
yeah.
need to come in here and fix this.
Right. And one of the first rules of reforms in politics is reforms are always there to fix the problem created by the previous waves of reforms.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Yep.
So basically, the last election, 2020 election, was decided by something like 40,000 votes out of what 80 million.
Yeah.
So out of millions, tens of millions of votes, the election was swung by 40,000 votes because there were certain choke points: Arizona, Georgia,
Wisconsin,
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so basically, it could be a rodeo like it was last time. But I think this time, a lot of people who were unwilling to be called conspiracy theorists in 2020, if you said that this is rigged, this smells, you're a nut job and you don't get interviewed on Fox anymore.
Yeah.
But
That's flipping.
That's flipping. And I've seen a lot of people who wouldn't, in a previous iteration, wouldn't have said what they're currently saying.
Yeah. So given that, so the first thing is don't move your baseline of normal.
Right.
Which, and you're pointing all of this out to say, so none of this is normal. We
None of it.
You can't go into this election season thinking everything's mostly normal. Let's hope they're good.
Right.
We have to say, no, none of this is normal. It's already massively, at best, massively incompetent.
Right.
And, but likely there's enough corruption going on that that's got to be going on too.
Correct.
And so what else then? So this is not normal. Then what do we do with that?
Well, what we do is we worship God. Number one, on the Lord's Day, honor God, worship God, ask God to have mercy on our country. And you're asking him to have mercy on our country, a mercy that we do not deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right.
Lord, I know that we don't deserve any of this, and I'm asking for it anyway because Jesus died. So worship God is the first thing. The second thing is, this is a political maxim. They can't cheat. If it's not close, they can't cheat.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So the Kamala became America's sweetheart overnight.
You ain't lying.
Uh,
You ain't lying.
Yeah.
She was disliked, recognized as a word salad queen. She was just, everybody knew.
Yeah.
Obama and others didn't want her to run. Biden got back at them by endorsing Kamala.
Oh, I see.
So
I see.
Biden was squeezed out and was irritated at what they did to him. And so he endorsed Kamala and
Forced their hand. Yeah.
saddled them with that.
Yeah.
And so they're playing cards with the hand that they were dealt.
Huh.
And so what happened, they know they've got shrewd operatives there. They know that Kamala is a bad candidate.
Yeah.
On her own devices, her own policies. She's not talented the way, and I'm not saying that because she's a Democrat. Obama was talented.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew that.
Bill Clinton was talented.
Yeah.
Obama was talented. Kamala is not talented.
Yeah.
And they're acting as though she is.
But isn't that your patriarchy coming out?
So they know this is going on. Worship God.
Yeah.
And
Worship God and vote early and often.
yeah.
Like a Democrat.
Multiple times.
That's a joke. Gotta go. It's FBI.
To me, it just seems like Reformation revival. I mean, I see pockets. I'm encouraged in a lot of places, but in general, I'm very disappointed with the church and how they view things currently, like what's going to wake up the church, where I see
another overture.
Another overture. We're going to do an overture on Reformation and Revival.
Why aren't we awake? Who's got a committee for that? All right.
I mean, I'm encouraged. I've seen people come to Christ through 2020, and that I never thought would, and stuff like that. But it's the church that I'm just like, what? Wake up. You know.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No comment there.
No. So I normally don't quote Lenin with approval, either Lenin, John or Vladimir. But Lenin said all it takes is a committed 5%.
Yeah.
And that's a principle that the Lord has used in the past. When Gideon rallied all the troops, God said, "You've got way too many people here." And this circles back to your earlier question of the attention that is being shown to Moscow. When Paul says, when the bugle blows indistinctly, no one gets ready for battle.
That's right.
But when the bugle blows distinctly, and it's the only thing that is blowing distinctly, then people respond.
Yeah.
And they oh, this is direction. I need direction. I need information. I need content. And you guys are providing it. Nobody else is. And so consequently, I think that's the space that we ought to occupy.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that because we live in an era where before you could have made the content, you could have created all this and been making a very clear sound, but then there wouldn't have been a lot of people around to hear it, where the social media and the platforms we exist on now allow that to be absorbed, right? People, you can find your people, where before I think it would have been like 20 years, somebody will find it in a book and then, oh, we have the printing press and it'll get out there, but now it's like, okay, tomorrow, right now we're live streaming. This is out there. Hundreds of people are watching. And so you don't have to wait to find that audience to communicate to.
Right.
So we live in a great time where we actually, in some ways, not this whole thing isn't microwavable, but some of the communication can be.
Here's an additional factor. There's some people who have content rich lectures, but it's like watching it's like watching paint dry. It's just good content, but no. And then there are people who are exuberant and charismatic in their presentation and are really interesting to listen to. And then the third level is the person who's really interesting to listen to with things being thrown at him. So if conflict is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dull people are not interesting. Interesting people are interesting. And interesting people in the middle of conflict are really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that means if you have interesting people who are not allergic to conflict, who don't wilt. So there'd be some people who'd be talented speakers and they could hold everybody's attention. But if you threatened them or came after them, they would fold. If you have someone who is not allergic to conflict, a Chesterton type, he's really interesting, and he had in the middle of conflict, all the time. That conflict, if you are walking down the street and you see a fist fight break out on the other side of the street, you stop because conflict is interesting. Something out of the ordinary is happening. So one of the things that's happening is our adversaries, who are throwing every manner of dead cat at us that they can think of, they're making us more interesting.
Yeah.
That's really good, Pastor.
So you should have gone fist to cuff with Pastor Gordon.
No,
that's what I'm getting out of this.
he's a brother in Christ.
But it's interesting.
Pastor Wilson, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Very grateful to have you here. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you a bunch of kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
Go to prodigalamerica.com. Come to Fight, Laugh, Feast in October.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like,
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
by my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up, I want to be offended
by my coworkers
and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery,
long time no see,
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
and do workplace sensitivity training
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder.
Just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist. I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
When I grow up, I want to work.
America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
Media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politic. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.